my degree is a Bachelor of Architecture from the University of Melbourne in 1960. I started out at the University of Queensland and did, at that stage, the first 3 years, which were full-time study, and then you did the final 3 years, because it was a 6-year course at that time, as a part-time student, and that allowed you to work for other architects. And the other architect I worked for was James Riddel, who was then the Brisbane City Council architect, and he was a graduate of Melbourne University and influenced me sort of substantially in that direction. So during that period of time working for him, I went down to Melbourne and, having never been there, kind of fell in love with a different environment and decided that I would transfer to Melbourne University. So as Melbourne then had a 5-year full-time course, I was able to transfer after 1 year with James into what were the 4th and 5th years of study. At that stage they had a wonderful thing called the Commonwealth Scholarship, which basically paid for your education, and I discovered that if you moved away from where you lived and lived somewhere else, they even paid for you to be accommodated there. So it was sort of a non-expensive idea to transfer, and I loved it. The professor of architecture at that stage was Brian Lewis, who was an English architect who worked with Roger Fry, who was quite a name in England at that stage. Gropius, when he left Germany, moved to England before he moved to the United States, and he was a partner with Fry, I believe. And Brian was one of these guys that was the essence of what a professor might be in a faculty where he wished to have some significance and dominance in that faculty. I'm saying this in the sense that at that stage I felt like the Faculty of Architecture in Queensland was like a sub-branch of engineering rather than being a unique entity of its own. And Lewis was really a very promotional kind of person and was able to advance the cause of architecture. And as a result of the connections he had, he brought Fritz Geneva, who was quite a name in architecture and who was also at the Bauhaus, and Bernard Smith in the arts department. And these people were very influential. I would really say that the University of Melbourne at that stage was a pretty eminent architecture department relatively to in terms of Australia. I would think, you know, it had Boyd, it had Grounds, it had those sort of people that were significant influences and involved in the department. And through that I also had Bill Carr, who wound up, and you probably know, here in Brisbane, and he was the reason why I actually ended up teaching at the University of Queensland, because when he came up here he asked me if I'd do that. But it was a quite remarkable, energised era of my life.